So today's vlog is going to be on learning styles and the importance of self-critical reflection by Tessia Marshak. So throughout Marshak's TED Talk, which was about 18 minutes long, give or take, she classified a few key points that I'd like to point out. She started off her presentation with a slide that says, "What makes us pause?" Now that kind of hit pretty deep because we don't realize that when we learn something important or something major happens in our lives, we actually have to take a second and reflect and learn and embrace it almost. Like, you get an F on a test and you thought you nailed it. You take a pause in whatever you're doing, whatever you were thinking, that 5 seconds before you got that test. And that pause, you think, what happened? What did I do wrong? What did I forget? What did I do? Now, this has to do with our learning styles. And she points out in the video that learning styles are actually wrong and they don't exist. And to a certain extent, she's right when you put it into perspective. We like to classify ourselves as either a visual learner, kinetic learner, auditorial learner, or anything. But it's the fact that we can learn any way, we just choose to learn one way, is what she points out. She also states that we also like to classify ourselves because it looks sexy. And in fact, it does, because people say, "Oh, I'm a musician, I'm an auditory learner." People are like, "Wow, that's pretty impressive." Or, "You're an athlete, so you are a physical learner." "Wow, that's pretty cool too." But in fact, anyone can do that if they really put themselves through it. So the next point I want to hit on is people have preference, but they don't actually enhance learning. Like she states in the video, the reason why people say go over your notes over and over again, that's not actually doing anything for you. It's morely having you memorize when memorization isn't good enough. You really need to make a connection with what you're learning, whether it be PEMDAS, parentheses, exponent, multiply, divide, add, subtract. Well, when we were younger, math teachers would use a funny acronym saying, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." By then, the kids make the connection. If they think of dear Aunt Sally, they can think of "please excuse my." And then there's the connection. Or with any other acronyms, like learning guitar, how you learn the strings. Elvis's guitar broke down, or that's not. Anyway, bring music into it. There are connections that can be made to help us learn. And one way I like to learn is trying to find something that I've had done in my life to relate to this topic. In math, I try to think of all the scenarios. If I were getting paid this much, but my percentage is this much, how much would I owe? Does that make sense? Because I'm personally not good at math, but if I put it in that perspective, then I'm able to understand it a little bit better every time. So she talks about in the video the Chase and Simon experiment, almost in a sense. They like to see people who are pros and beginners at chess. Now, which name goes with which, I'm not sure. Don't remember, but anyway, it shows that if you are a pro and you're able to organize the pieces, then you're able to remember a lot more. To whereas if you're just beginning and you don't really understand what's going on, you're not going to remember as much. And that's true for every scenario. If you're able to organize the pieces and put them into the proper place, you can remember them so much more. But if you're just starting out and you really don't give much effort into it, you're not going to remember that much at all. Although, even though auditory, visual learning, all those, even though that is a somewhat myth, if you put more than one together, you're more than likely going to get a better result than just with one. For example, an athlete, you make a mistake on the field, your coach tells you how to fix it, then they show you the steps to take how to fix it. That's auditory and visual. and then now you get to apply it when you go back on the field. So that's 3 out of the 4 that you're able to apply, therefore reinforcing the fact that you've learned it a lot better than what you think. Now go apply it. So I thought this TED Talk was really interesting just for the fact that I myself thought, man, I thought I had auditory visual learning when in fact it's just a preference, but it doesn't actually exist in a sense. So, knowing that thought, I actually need to reevaluate how I study because I feel that might be one of the biggest reasons why I have problems with studying and memorization or coming with key terms and figuring out things on my own. It's because I trust that auditory process, that visual process, when in fact I just need to reevaluate how I study.